It's 2 a.m. You're exhausted. Not the clean, satisfying kind of tired that comes after something was built or finished or truly lived. This is a different kind. The kind where your body is flat on the mattress, but your mind is still running, scrolling through nothing in particular, replaying conversations from 3 days ago, rehearsing tomorrow's obligations like a script you never asked to memorize. You've had the weekend, you slept in, you did nothing technically, and somehow you feel more hollow than when you started. If that sounds familiar, I want you to stay with me tonight. Because what I've come to understand, through psychology, through philosophy, and through the kind of exhaustion that doesn't respond to anything on a wellness app, is that most of us aren't recovering wrong because we're lazy. We're recovering wrong because no one ever told us what rest actually is. Tonight, we're going to change that.
There is a kind of tired that sleep cannot fix. Researchers have been studying it since the 1970s, when a psychologist named Christina Maslach began mapping what happens to people who give everything, to their work, to others, to a version of life they were told they should want, and then have nothing left. She called it burnout. And she found something that still unsettles people when they first hear it. Burnout is not just fatigue, it is depletion at the level of the self. That distinction matters more than anything I'll say tonight. Think about it this way. Imagine a river. When you're merely tired, physically tired, healthily tired, the river has run low, but the banks are still there. The shape is intact. Give it rain, give it time, and the water returns. Burnout is something else. Burnout is when the banks themselves begin to erode, when rest doesn't refill anything because the container is what's broken. This is why surface rest, scrolling, sleeping in, numbing out, zoning into screens, fails so reliably. It puts water in a cracked vessel. It feels like doing something. It feels like rest, but it doesn't rebuild what burnout has worn away. What does? That's what we're here to explore. And I want to give it a name, not to be clever, but because naming things is the first step toward understanding them. I call it deep rest, and it works on 3 levels that surface rest never touches. Your nervous system is not a battery. This is the metaphor we use, but it's wrong, and the metaphor is part of why we keep failing at recovery. We think, I'm depleted, I need to recharge, I will rest, and then I will be full again. But your nervous system is not designed like a battery. It is designed like a tuning fork. It responds to the environment around it, not just to the absence of stimulation, but to the quality of what it senses. A neuroscientist named Stephen Porges spent decades building what he called Polyvagal Theory, a way of understanding how our nervous system is always, beneath everything we do and think and feel, scanning the world for signals of safety or threat. He called this process neuroception. And the profound thing is, it happens below the level of conscious thought. Your body is reading the room before your mind has a chance to form a single opinion about it. When your nervous system is in a state of chronic stress, which is the physiological reality of burnout, it gets stuck in what Porges described as a mobilized threat response. The engine never fully idles, the alarm never fully quiets, and surface rest for a nervous system in that state isn't rest. It's just stillness on top of noise. Deep rest, at this first level, means creating genuine signals of safety,
Not just the absence of demands, but the presence of cues that tell your body the threat has passed. You are not running. You are not being chased. You are allowed right now to fully arrive. What creates those signals? Not entertainment, not novelty. The research and older wisdom both point toward things like the slow rhythm of breath, the sensation of sunlight or water or earth beneath your hands, the sound of a voice you trust, nature, which speaks a frequency the nervous system has always known, long, unhurried meals, silence without obligation. These are not luxuries. At the level of your nervous system, they are medicine. The second layer is the one nobody talks about in burnout articles, because it's harder, and it requires an honesty that feels dangerous when you're already depleted. Christina Maslach, in her research, identified 3 distinct dimensions of burnout. Exhaustion was one, but the other 2 were cynicism, a growing distance from the work, from other people, from meaning, and inefficacy, the creeping sense that nothing you do matters, that you are going through the motions that lead nowhere. Albert Camus wrote about something he called the absurd, the collision between a human being's desperate need for meaning and a world that offers no guaranteed answer. He wasn't describing burnout specifically, he was describing the human condition. But what I've come to believe is that burnout is what happens when we spend years in that collision unconsciously, when we pour ourselves into things that feel meaningful without ever asking, is this actually meaningful to me, or have I inherited someone else's definition of a life well spent? Deep rest at this second level means pausing long enough to ask the question that exhaustion has been preventing you from asking. What am I actually running toward? Not what you're running from, fear is easy to name, but what, if you stripped away obligation and expectation and the performance of busyness, you would choose? What still carries weight when everything feels weightless? This is not the same as finding your passion. That phrase has done a great deal of harm. It suggests there is a single blazing answer waiting to be discovered, like a gift left under a tree. What the research on meaning and the more honest tradition of existential philosophy actually suggests is that meaning is something we build, slowly through attention and commitment, and returning again and again to what we care about, even when caring is hard. So the practice at this level is not dramatic. It begins with something small, with noticing, genuinely noticing, which moments in your day feel inhabited and which feel hollow. Not to force an answer, just to begin mapping what's true. Because you cannot rest back into a life that was already emptying you. At some point, rest and redesign have to happen together. The third layer is the one that requires the most courage to look at, because it asks not just what you do, but who you have allowed yourself to become. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who led campaigns, managed an empire, and still sat down each night to write meditations that were never meant to be read, understood something that most of us spend decades learning the hard way. He understood that identity is not a fixed thing. It is a practice. It is something you have to choose and defend and return to constantly. Burnout has a quiet accomplice, and it is the erosion of the boundary between who you are and what you do. It happens slowly, so slowly you don't notice until the merger is complete, until you feel genuine guilt for resting because some part of you has come to believe that your worth is measured only in what you produce. Until you answer emails at midnight, not because you have to, but because the silence of not answering feels dangerous somehow, like a threat to the version of yourself that everyone expects. The Stoics talked often about what they called hegemonikon, the ruling faculty, the part of you that decides what you assent to, what you give power to, what you allow to define your day. Their point was not that you should be unmoved, it was that the distance between what happens to you and how you respond is the only space in which you are truly free. For people in burnout, that space has collapsed. Everything lands directly. Every demand is immediately a claim on your identity. Every limit you try to set feels like a betrayal of something. Deep rest at this third level means reclaiming that space. It means practicing, imperfectly, incrementally, the art of saying, "This is mine and that is not mine. This is my responsibility and that is not. This is who I am choosing to be today." Boundaries, in other words, are not walls. They are the architecture of a self that can survive contact with the world. I want to be careful here, because I've sat in the kind of exhaustion we've been describing tonight, and I know how easily hope curdles into performance, how quickly "here's what will fix you" becomes another thing to fail at. So I'm not going to offer you a plan. I want to offer something smaller and I think more honest. Recovery is not an event. It is a direction. The neuroscience tells us that the nervous system can recalibrate, but it recalibrates through consistent small signals, not through single interventions. You don't recover from burnout in a weekend. You recover the way a garden recovers from a long drought, slowly from the roots, over a season or more. And the question is not, am I healed, but am I moving, even slightly, in the direction of what sustains me? 3 things held lightly. The first, one daily moment of genuine nervous system rest. Not a nap, not a podcast, something that sends your body the signal that the threat has passed. You came here tonight with a particular kind of tired, and I won't pretend that these words have fixed that. Words don't fix this. Time and honesty and small returning acts of care, those are what fix this. But perhaps this much is true. You already knew something was wrong. The fact that you're still awake, still asking, still trying to understand what's happened to you, that is not failure. That is the first movement of recovery. The ones who find their way back are the ones who kept asking. Tonight, perhaps you might do just one thing. Not a plan, not a list. One small act of genuine rest, whatever that means to your nervous system, your sense of meaning, your battered but still breathing sense of self. Set the phone down, let the night be what it is, and trust, even tentatively, that the self you have been depleting is still there, waiting, not with urgency, but with patience. It always was.